Alright, y'all. This video is on the shifter, just kind of pick up where I left off on the last video. So, today I will show you guys how I managed to install a very nice shifter right here in between the seats. It's also a bonus of having the two bucket seats, is now there's room in between here to put something like this. So I will put the links in the description for the housing for the shifter assembly and then the cables that I used. Those were the only three things that I bought for the shifting mechanism, and then just some Ace hardware to mount it in here. So start off, the shifter is from Go Power Sports. I found them through watching other YouTube channels. They are a golf cart centered company. That's really just what they specialize, golf carts and mini bikes. But they have a lot of fabrication parts for your own projects, and this worked out perfectly. So this is their I don't remember exactly what it's called, but we're just going to say a shifting mechanism and the housing for it. This does work on the same basis as the Yamaha shifter, and that's where you have opposing cables. One is relaxing while the other one is pulling tension as you shift. And that's how Yamaha has set up their shifter. I don't know about other golf carts. This is for a gas golf cart. An electric one just merely changes the rotation of the motor. So this is really only something for gas golf carts. I imagine that if you had an electric one, you could maybe relocate the switch to somewhere here if you wanted to, but I don't have an electric golf cart, so maybe somebody else might post a video on something like that, but this is an idea for you. So I've just used simple L brackets to mount this here. There is a center bolt that goes through the center of the rotating mechanism on here, which is also just long enough to put two brackets on either side, and you still have the bolt that comes flush to the nut. So there's they've pre-thought of how much length of bolt that you'll need to add something like this. Then I just use simple coarse thread screws to bite into this plastic, and then they also leave you a hole in the rear part of this assembly to attach another bracket. In this case, I've bent it 90 degrees. It is an L bracket, and I've just rotated it back 90 degrees. And the reason for that is when you have this center bolt here, if I go to pull this down, and if that bracket on the back there wasn't attached, this whole thing would want to rotate forward or rotate backward and not stay in place for me to move that around. So well thought out on their end, and once again, just using coarse thread screws. Everything is solid. I can shake the whole golf cart just by holding on to this, so this is solidly mounted. From there, I have two cables coming from this. Now, I ordered this from Go Power Sports along with the cables here, so they have already engineered it for these to work together seamlessly. So when you buy the cables from them, and I'll post these two items in the description so that you know what I bought. When you buy them together, they just go right together. No issues, no guessing, no fabrication. Works perfectly. Let me get around to the other side here and show you what I've done going backwards. Alright, so cables, traditionally the cables would run from the back of the golf cart along the passenger side of the golf cart up to the front here, where you would have that rotating lever. So this I kept, I just put it in between the seats here, but I wanted to keep it in the center of the golf cart. So the cables here, I have them running back, and there is a lot of excess cable that I have just cut a slot through the cover where the air filter is, and have them running down into the engine bay back towards the transmission drive area. But the reason I have and want all this excess cable, and it just slides itself underneath the seat and it stays in between the two passenger areas. But I wanted to maintain and keep the ability to flip the seats up without having to unbolt the actual shifter itself or trying to unbolt anything else with the cables just to flip the seat up, because you have your gas tank. There's no sense on tying this whole assembly down to make it difficult to just gain access to this area. So that's on you, depending on how you want to do this. I guess the cables could have come out through here and then dropped down like the factory ones, and then ran down and around, but I found that this is just the easiest way to do it. So they just come down and around. I've cut a long slot in this cover so that they can just go right back down to the transmission. There really is no area between the seat here and the groove that it fits in to run them down into this part of the engine bay. That's why I had to cut a slot. There's just no room to have them come up through here. Not unless you wanted to actually cut a groove into the seat. I figured if I was going to cut a groove and if I were going to make a mistake, it's easy to buy this thing and replace it, as opposed to buying another seat, which is very expensive from the factory, and just because I cut a slot that I messed up. So, you know, picking my battles, my areas to mess up. So didn't mess up on this one. It's just easier to replace if I did. So let me put this down and show you guys what I did on the transmission part. One thing I forgot to mention before going to the back there, having this mounted in the middle here, something like this, I looked into it while the foam and the vinyl was still on the seat here from the factory. There wasn't an easy, safe, or reliable way to mount this on the foam or the vinyl. If you use brackets like this, I mean, yes, you could drill through the foam and the vinyl and compress it, but I mean, if you sit down on that foam, your body weight will compress it, and then, I don't know, you might catch a thigh or a hip on that edge, and that just would not be fun. So part of me taking the foam and the vinyl off allowed me to do this type of upgrade. If you don't want to do the seat upgrade, but you still want something like this, I don't know, you might have to find something up here that you could mount to, I don't know, to the steering column, or you know, maybe down here have the cables keep following underneath the golf cart. You know, it's going to be player's choice at that point, but with the vinyl and the foam off, this area was perfect for mounting this sort of thing. Okay guys, I've got this set up the best way I can here to show you guys. Alright, so coming down to the back, you'll see that you'll have a bracket here, which from the factory they use the cables to mount to this shifter T-bar, this little T-tower here. I forgot to tighten that down. Well, this is why you review what you've done, so you don't leave anything undone like this. So left the mounting bracket and left the T-tower here, which this thing shifts back and forth as you shift. One of these cables relaxes, the other one tenses up. So I'm still using the factory bracket and the factory T-bar and the little pin assemblies here, the plastic bushings and the springs and the spring cap.
all still using the factory hardware. The only thing that's been replaced back here is the cable itself. So if you look underneath your golf cart, now this pertains to the Yamaha Drive. I can't speak for Club Car or Easy Go, but this is their shifting mechanism. And what they've done is with the factory shifter and with that Go Power Sport shifter, the idea is with these springs to over pull this T-bar. And what I mean by that is it only moves a few degrees to shift from forward or reverse, and then it stops in the middle for neutral. But the cable is meant to pull and compress this spring. So this spring is more compressed than this guy, and that's because it's in drive. When it's in reverse, this cable will relax and this will become taut, but it actually over pulls and compresses the spring. So I did not want to change the way it was engineered. It's a very reliable, very positive way to guarantee that you're going to stay in gear. It also guarantees that if the springs weren't here and you had it all adjusted wrong, that you wouldn't be over pulling on the shifter T-bar here. So I'm just using the smallest cable clamps I can find. I would like to find and order something a little different. I believe they're called cable barrels. They look like a little barrel with a hole through it and a screw. But this is what I had. This is what I found. They work really well. They clamp very hard. Probably should clean that up a little bit better. But using the Go Power Sports cable, they are 60 inches long, 5 feet. So that's plenty of cable to get back here to the front and still have enough cable to tilt the seats forward. So if you're going to take this apart and you're going to do this upgrade or something like this, do not throw away the factory hardware. The only thing that I could not use to make this happen were the factory cables. That is because at the end of their cables, they have welded on cable barrels. So the only way to get the factory cables off this shifter is to physically cut them. And that's a lot of commitment. Once you cut them, you can't put it back on. You could get the replacement barrels, but the factory ones are already trimmed to length. This has a little excess cable. As you can see, I got a little bit left here. Just know that when you go to clip these factory cables off, you're committing to tossing them. After that, knock my light over. After that, once you get this all assembled here, you do have to spend some time tuning it, figuring out where to set these clamps so that you have enough to completely put the shifter in each position and make sure that the T-bar is in the correct position. So when it's in forward, this should be positively engaged with the spring compressed and still have a little room to pull it even more. When it's in forward or reverse, I do not want to see these 100% compressed. That just means that I'm over pulling the cable. You want to have these springs balanced well with each other to where when it's in forward, compressed halfway, positively in drive. When it's in neutral, these should be balanced, holding the shifter in between forward and reverse, making it neutral, and then the opposite for reverse. This should be compressed halfway. This should be let go all the way. So it is a little awkward getting underneath here, fine-tuning it, but relatively easy. Just a lot of time and just tedious pulling the cable out. You only have to move this just a tiny little bit to make a difference. But yeah, oh, I didn't even put the vent hose back in here. There we go. That is supposed to be there. This is a breather hose for your drive system. I believe there is a little bit of fluid in there. In fact, I know there's some fluid in there. So if you see this hose, don't pull this off. Don't throw this away. It's important. It lets the case breathe. And if the oil gets too hot, it can vent out. If you take this hose off, you're going to have an open hole towards the back of this where dust and dirt can get into. So don't take that tube off.
And just here's a view showing you guys of me sitting in the seat. My leg does not hit this in any way. It may look like it. It's not. I've got room in there. And it's right here, right at my fingertips. Neutral and drive. And I don't have to lean over anymore and flip the handle. Sometimes the passenger, they kind of put their leg over, and I have to, bump their leg out of the way or ask them to move to get to it. This is conveniently right here. Well, guys, I hope that gives you guys an idea of the creativeness that you can have with these golf carts. Definitely a better option than the Mad Jack shifter. I think I said in the last video that thing was $200. Very beautifully made, machined. It's all aluminum, a lot of linkages. Really cool, but at the price, I didn't want to do it. But I believe this was $30, and I believe the cables are, you know what? I'll have everything in description so you can see. I know they do sales. I know there's promotions out there, all sorts of stuff. Other YouTubers have promotion codes to get discounts. So see what's out there. I think I only paid, I think in total this thing cost me less than $60. So actually less than $50. So a lot better option. But still very convenient, still very practical, still very cool. Anyways, y'all have a good one.